What more? Second row, and then here.
My first question is, Val and I went to New Orleans last week, and we had an incredible time. Were you there?
Jerry and Esther took us through there a few weeks ago, and we hung around for the Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
Oh, we're having fun with you. We're everywhere you are.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if, I just took my inner being, or if you were there with us.
Well, your inner being is among us.
Okay.
In other words, it's a big party that just moves about. Mardi Gras all the time.
Good. I want to tell a story that has to do with the experience, because something happened. I'm not sure exactly how to explain or understand. I want to understand a little bit more. I've been coming and talking with you for years and years and years. And in the early days, finances was one of the things I think we talked about a lot, struggling financially. And over the years, I've seen incredible shifts, things opening up, and I learned a lot about releasing. And one of the games we've been playing a lot is winning the lottery, and mostly because it's one avenue that you could say, okay, if I won the lottery, here's the way that millions would flow. And so it just seems like it's a great game at figuring out how millions could flow. And so we've been playing, how would we spend it and what would we do? And we have such detailed plans about foundations we want to create and how we'd expand the business and the programs we'd offer and toys we'd buy and gifts we'd give. I mean, it goes on and on and on. At the same time,
it takes a lot of focus to spend a lot of money.
It does. It does.
Focus that serves you well.
And at the beginning, we had a hard time figuring out how we'd spend $10 million. Now, when we play with $200 million, it's not enough, because there's so much we want to do. So we've seen the growth, continue, and the flow gets bigger. The toys, the things we'd like to have show up in our lives. I mean, everything just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're at Mardi Gras. And, one of the things that happens there, of course, you collect all these beads. So we went to the parades, and the big floats come flying by, and they're throwing thousands of beads, to the crowds. And at the beginning, you get really caught up, and you got to have all these little plastic beads, like they're something of great value. So sometimes they just fly by and you grab them. Sometimes they're on the ground and you scramble for them. Sometimes you run out in between the crowds to get them. You fight off other people for them. There was all this, fun energy. Well, the further the parades went, it got to the place where it was an amazing experience where you would ask, try to get their attention, and they would point at me. These beads are for you, literally, and throw them at me. And sometimes it'd be a single, really pretty bead, and another time it would be bags. There were hundreds of beads in some of the bags. We'd share them with people around us, and it was just drape them over, and pretty soon you're hanging, your head's hanging. You had so many beads, and we were stuffing them in our backpacks, and got back to the room and emptied out the beads. And there were piles, there were hundreds and hundreds of beads piled on both of the beds. We'd gone with couple of friends.
Let us take a segment of refreshment, and when we come back, we want you to pick up where you left off, because there's a very big thing in here for all.
Good.
We're ready for you.
Okay. Back to the beads. During the throwing and catching experience, I noticed a couple little things. One of them was that I'm an athlete and I get competitive every now and then. And so when I would fall into that energy, and get competitive over, they've got more than me or whatever, I noticed that I never got the beads. Someone would always sneak in and get there first.
Can you hear her?
And then I finally would just let that go. Literally the beads would fly right to me. So we're stuffing the beads, we're holding the beads, we're giving the beads away. We had so many beads that some of the people around us, if they weren't catching them or we'd catch them at the same time, we'd share them and split them up. And
the world is awash in beads.
I'm telling you, I've never seen so many beads in my life. It was amazing. It was. at one point we stopped on our way. We're just walking around. And of course we really, we'd stop places and, buy the funny, funky colored wigs and masks. And now everybody is dressed up and everybody is out there, but we literally had people stop us on the street and say, could we take your picture? Because we want to show people, what this energy is about. Everybody's dressed up. Why did they pick us? That we were the ones that they had to show off as far as pictures.
Because you were truly having fun.
Yeah.
In other words, you weren't going through the motions of it. The fun was flowing, radiating through you.
Uh-huh.
They could see the light around you.
Right. So we get home with all of our stuff, and we're dumping it on the beds. It's piled high. We had so much fun. We were like splitting up the beads by colors and by sizes and by shapes. And, we have 47 of these kind and 102 of these kind. And, then we started talking about, what are we going to do with all these beads? Well, we were going to package them up and give them to friends. And these beads were hoarding just for us because they're so special and unique. And these beads were giving away. And these beads were going to play games. And just incredibly fun. But there was a point I looked at Val and I said, we just won the lottery. That it felt like it couldn't have been any more joyous if it had been $100 bills laying all over the bed and piled and falling off onto the floor. I felt...
And if you could find a way of getting into the spirit of allowing dollars to flow to you, in other words, this was a microcosm of exactly the way that it works. The entire world wanting to yield specifically to you, and you being in the joyful, fun, vibrational attitude that allows it to flow. No shortage.
I guess I felt, when I said that to Val, I had this physical feeling of, tingles and energy flowing.
Confirmation, inner being agreeing.
Yes.
Letting you know that this is what that feels like too.
Right.
Yes. Now let's talk about the components of it. Even though there was, from time to time, a feeling of competitiveness, the overall feeling that you had was that there were plenty to go around, and everyone was out there just in an attitude of receiving.
Right.
And you were among those that were in the attitude of receiving.
Yes.
And that is an important thing to do. Now translate beads to abundance, dollar abundance.
Right.
And think about the world out there with you. Now you were all lined up along one street, and there was the benefactor or the thrower of the beads that were there, and sort of translate that to be the universe yielding. And now think of all of the people that are around and what the usual attitude is about the receiving. Some of them are more joyful than others, but try to imagine feeling about dollars in the way that you felt about those beads, where you knew anybody that wanted them could really get them. There was no feeling of guilt. There was no feeling of hoarding. There was no feeling of getting more than your fair share. It was just a feeling of opening and allowing the well-being to flow to you and through you. And that's the same attitude that you're wanting to have relative to dollars. The idea that it was a party atmosphere where everyone, or nearly everyone who came to the party, came to have a good time. And if you could think in terms of the world that is wanting dollars all coming to the party, and imagine in your mind's eye they're all having a good time. This can be a very good thing for you as you increase the flow of dollars that comes to you by putting yourself into that identical attitude relative to the beads. When you buy something extravagant, say to your partner, it's only beads. It's only beads. In other words, it's only beads, and they're flying through the air from everywhere. The universe is just looking for every opportunity to yield them. It's only beads, you see. And when you have that same light-hearted, non-resisted, carefree, open and willing to allow and receive dollars in the way that you were open and willing to allow and receive beads,
it feels like there is a momentum building. On our way here, we went to check in, and they said, would you be willing to wait and take a later flight, which I never do, but we'll give you, we got $600 vouchers for future travel, and they upgraded us to first class. And, then we got here, and because we got here late, my car had been given away, so they had to upgrade, me at no charge. And then last night we got into a room and we didn't understand because it wasn't the setup we had asked for, but we dealt with it. And then today they needed to correct it. And so now for tonight we get a suite with 2 rooms, you know. So it feels like there's this momentum that is building and building and building. So,
well, the momentum will always build because law of attraction says that it must. And you cannot identify a desire and focus upon it without adding to and adding to and adding to. We would say that while momentum is always building, we do not think that is so much what you are feeling, okay, is that you have found a crack of greater allowing. There's just, you are in an attitude of more allowing than usual. And so you are letting the universe yield to you the things that you've been asking for.
So my job is to go back to the bead place as much as I can.
We would go back to that feeling place of the amazement of all of that abundance flowing to you. And recognize there's a detail here that we want to chew on just for a moment, and that is that the beads did not feel valuable, although they were wanted. And the fact that they did not feel valuable made it believable. So you found yourself in the perfect place of wanting something that you, in other words, you desired something that you believed. That's the recipe, isn't it? If I want it and believe it, then the universe can yield it immediately. And so you're wanting to feel as easy and believable about the dollars flowing as you do about the beads flowing. And it is, in fact, exactly the same thing. When you get yourself into that place, that's why we encourage you to start spending beads for a while. In other words, it's only beads. These dollars come as easily as the beads. They are one and the same.
Wow. That's interesting because we had a strategy. She's tall, I'm short. She went for the high throws. I went for the low stuff. And then, you know, I was like, we could do this, man. We could haul in a lot of beads. So you're right. My belief was really, really high.
And then as you got into the spirit of it, you actually found yourself being targeted. People were actually choosing you.
Yes.
And why would they choose you? Why would a thrower of the beads choose someone who obviously had more beads than they needed? Why would they choose you? In other words, why weren't they throwing beads to the people who had no beads? Why weren't they being fair in their throwing of beads? Why weren't the beadless ones getting the beads? Why were the hoarders of the beads getting so many more beads? Because law of attraction says that it must be. You were in the spirit of it. You were in the vibration of it. You were wanting and willing. You were in vibrational alignment with it. So you light it up. They're wanting to play with those that are in the spirit of it. And there's not much more fun than completing the circle with someone who's having a whole lot of fun. You see, you hear us talk about going to the store with a little child who is excited about being there and in love with everything she sees, and you just want to yield to her in every way you possibly can. And then there's another child with you who is angry and upset and defeated and grouchy and whining, and your feeling of yielding to that one is not nearly as great. You sort of want to just take that one by the hand and get her out of the store. And so the universe is not punishing you or blessing you. The universe is responding to the vibrational attitude that you are emitting. And the more joyful you are, the more well-being flows to you, and you get to choose the details of how it flows. And the thing that we're most wanting you to hear from us is that as you have had the experience with beads, you can have the experience with dollars. It is the identical vibration that allows either one. Yes. Yes.
Wow. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Indeed.